Okay, Garrett, we are recording and live, so we are ready to get started if you want.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is the public comments, and Matt, would you take that since you have control of that?
Yes, I will go ahead and do that. I don't see that we have anybody from the public. It is all staff and committee members. So there is no public comment.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the public hearing for state shared revenue. We'll now open the meeting to a public hearing for any public comments specifically about the state shared revenue.
Hey, Garrett, I see one person that I don't recognize connecting right now. Hi, is Sarah there? Sarah from Restorative. If you would like to make a public comment, go ahead and raise your hand or send me a chat. Other than that, I do not see anybody else from the public.
Okay, since there are no public comments, I will entertain a motion to receive the state shared revenue as written in number 3. Someone would make that motion, please.
I so move. Second.
Second.
I move that I so move.
And it was a second?
Yeah, Doug Morton.
Okay. Any comments to that? Any discussion? Seeing that there is no discussion, the motion to receive state shared revenue for the general fund use in 2020, 2021 has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. See, the motion is carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the approval of property tax rate. Again, I'll entertain a motion for approval of property tax rate as stated in number 1.
Make a motion to approve the tax rate as proposed.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, the motion to approve the FY 2020-2021 property tax rate of $1.9078 for 1,000 of assessed values for general fund property taxes for tax levied by the city of St. Helens permanent rate. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next section is the approval of the proposed city budget. Again, I got the wrong one. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the expenditures as stated in number 1.
I'm trying to find my number 1 so I can see what we're doing. Sorry. Can you give
That's
me
okay.
1 minute?
I'm just about to put it on the screen.
Is it on the screen, Matt?
It was for a second.
All right, good now? Can you see it on the screen now?
I guess.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry.
If someone will read that on number 1 and make that motion.
I so move that we accept number 1 and approve the expenditures for fiscal year 2021
M-
as shown in the,
Hey, Bill, I need you to actually read the dollar amount.
okay, except I can't read it. It's 43,001.
43 million.
I can't read the last, yeah, I can only read.
Yeah, you're in the way, Matt. You need to shrink it up. Shrink it up.
Perhaps Matt can move it.
The Zoom faces get in the way of the entire
Yep.
document.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. $43,121,000.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion is on the floor, and it's open for debate. At this point in time, amendments can be made to that motion if so desired.
I just had a question or a
Yeah.
comment or just a input from staff. As a lot of our citizens are worried about budget expenditures, and I know that Don and Matt have been working on places where we can save, and I just would like them to answer that question now. There are things that are allocated that may or may not happen. So I just want to be on the record.
Sure. I'll take that one. I mean, this budget establishes expenditure authority, and I think it as a follow-up to this, we may want to actually read that statement again as far as the allocating to the funds in the proposed budget to make sure we have a complete record of what number 1 actually says there. But yeah, so, you know, with the COVID pandemic and all of the unknown uncertainty and other communities having layoffs and cutbacks and big anticipated revenue shortfalls, we feel pretty confident that we're not going to be hit as hard as most places are. But we are attempting to maintain some. Currently, we have a number of positions that aren't filled, and we're looking at that as a buffer to kind of wait and see as this budget goes along, and you know, if what we believe to be correct as far as you know, stability in our funds, you know, holds true, then we'll be able to add back those, you know, those positions, or just hold off and wait and see if it starts to go down, because the you know, one of the more difficult things about this type of work, it's always nice to hire people and bring people aboard, but having to lay off and let people go is just not, you know, not a good thing. So.
And is there additional amounts in contingency this year compared to past years? Have we held things back?
Yeah, so through the budget process, and in the graphs that you saw, you'll see, you know, the city's 20% minimum reserve, and you know the target of 30, and the staffing options that we have, even with those positions filled, it still kind of is kind of right in the middle, you know, 25%ish. So it's not below the minimum, but it's not above our goal either. So we're I think we're being cautiously optimistic here. So
Okay, I just wanted that to be on the record because you and I have had that conversation, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't happen in the budget meeting.
that's correct. Yeah.
Any
That's all
further
I
questions?
had.
I had one thing too. I noticed that Matt has done a lot of things, even more so on this budget than on last ones, and he's always kind of working on it, where he's just really trying to divide things out and place things where they actually go, moving around staff and even kind of cutting their pay in between places, just to kind of show accurately what is spending the money and what's bringing in the money. And I think that that is really great. Like every city and business and person should know what things are costing them and that kind of thing. And on that line, I know it's not a popular belief, but I really do think that the money that comes out of not just tourism, but community development in general, I think that that should be split out and more accurately show Public Works and maybe even the police department, that those things are spending a lot of money on kind of growing tourism in our community. And I'm not saying growing tourism is bad. I own a business down here.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that we should be accurate, right, about how much does 13 nights cost? How much does, and I know that those numbers are difficult to come up with, and I'm not saying that we should have to come up with them exact, but I truly believe that we should be, for many different reasons, and I know I kind of wrote Matt a note and just said, there's too many reasons why we shouldn't try to do this. And I'm not suggesting hiring somebody to follow everybody around and track their hours, how many police calls came from this, how many from that. But for the police and the Public Works, I think those things should be at least somehow acknowledged. For one, you never know what tourism dollars may be available, and we can say, hey, our city's spending a lot of money on this stuff, and kind of have the paperwork to show that we're doing it. And also just for us to know, how much money are we spending on these things?
Leah,
Mm-hmm.
from my standpoint of working with Public Works over the years, they do keep track of their hours and what they have been working with, and each individual does that, and we are able to track it if we have the desire to track it and financially study it. So far the studies haven't, pardon me, so far the studies haven't been asked for how much we're spending specifically with Public Works on certain and specific areas. Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my feeling that I get when I look at and I've questioned you, and in the past Neil, of how many hours and how many types of things that we've been doing it. So if anyone who wants that information, it's there. Whether it should be in the budget to study, I'm not certain. And I wanted to clarify, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I think it should be represented in the budget what we're spending money on. So if, I mean, I'm not saying to the penny, of course, but if at the end of every week, Sue kind of asks everybody, hey, how many hours did you spend on 13 Nights this week, or Halloween Town this week, or 4th of July this week? How many hours did you spend decorating for Christmas this week?
Right.
You can give her an estimate, right? And then after 1 year's done, you could even kind of just sally it, right? Same as last year, because then we kind of know what we're spending on each thing. I just feel like that for a lot of reasons, and I know I'd kind of written Matt a note talking about it, but one of the things is that I think Public Works does a lot of work, and not just for that, but in general. So at some point they're going to need more staff, they're going to need more equipment, and I think they're going to be asked, well, what have you done with what you have? And I think they should have an accurate list of what they've done, not just well, in our spare time we did this. They should be able to say, no, this much time we produced all these events for the community. And so I just think it should be reflected in the budget. If not here, where would it be? So, and I kind of feel like the same way for the police department. You know, we're looking at in 4 years, their budgets went up by like 1/3 or something. And I notice every meeting, every time somebody's asking, well, has St. Helens grown, or has his call volume come up? And he's saying some of these events take a lot of hours. And so I think that should be reflected for their benefit, not just for the benefit of having an accurate way knowing it. I think he should be able to say, well, but we do put on these huge events for the whole area, and this is how much that costs us.
I think that's a good point. And in my job that I work with, we do recaps, and we get 15 minutes a day to do that recap.
Right.
And in that 15 minutes, every employee at the end of the day sits down and gets paid for actually recapping what they did, and it's all coded and all of that. The department heads then take that information, crunch it with dollar values and whatever, and it goes into administration. So administration can make the shifts of where people are spending, if they're shoveling too much snow, or if they're greeting too many guests, or if they're doing this, or if they're doing that, then they make those adjustments if they need to make those adjustments. And all I'm saying is that I think our department heads do that on their own. I can't speak for the police and I can't speak for the library, but I can certainly speak for Public Works, that they look and they study where all that energy is going and where the cost is. The problem is, and I think that what you're asking for is a report so that we can see that at least, and then that makes that department.
I think it should be a line on the budget. I'm not just asking for a report. I think it should show Public Works out of the general fund or whatever, out of somehow Tourism Community Development Fund should be paying Public Works for their time. Even if we have to then go back and put more into that account, we would have an accurate accounting of what community development is spending. And kind of the same with the police. I think it should be more than a report. I think it should be a budget line. I think it should be accurately shown what we're really spending on that stuff. And another, and not that it matters that much at all, but when you think about it, probably every person who's ever had anything to do with this budget, when somebody, looks at Public Works doing all this work around the city, they'll complain and they'll say, my tax dollars pay for that. And what do all of us answer? Oh, no, it doesn't. Tourism pays for that. But that's not actually accurate.
You're correct.
Tourism only pays for 95% of it.
You're correct in that assessment, but however, I'm not advocating a quote unquote report. I'm advocating that what has happened is that information is there. It's there, and it just hasn't come out. And all I'm saying is if you want a report or if you want feedback, it's there. So all we have to do is ask for it.
The word is the public's got to be able to see it. And while it's there, the public doesn't have easy access. In the budget document, the public has, quote, easy access to that same information. I think the name of the game is easy access for the public to see these numbers.
So if I could make a comment on this issue, and to me, it really depends on your lens. And Lee is talking about, true cost accounting, and we're all about that. Matt's done a lot of things to try to get us to know what department and what goes where and who's doing it and allocating time properly. But at some level, when you kind of pull the microscope back a little bit, you start to look at the collective value of the city, all of the services the city provides and how the team works together. We have a tourism fund, but tourism is more than just a fund. It's a program. It's part of the quality of life. It's as important as the police department is to public safety. These investments that the city is making in tourism are really what's going to get it to the the next level as far as a sense of identity and just attracting quality investment in the waterfront. And that's a lot of our double down here on tourism has really been about that. It's about activating the waterfront, making sure local businesses are not just surviving, but thriving. And you can go down really deep and look at all the little details, but when you pull back up, it's just everybody working together to try to make that happen.
Which for me, this isn't like a debate on whether tourism should happen or not at all, because I don't think that's what
I understand that. Yeah,
has to do. It's more about just accuracy and accounting. For me, because I think that's actually, as a budget committee person, that's what I'm being asked to look at, is more accuracy. And so I'm noticing that this isn't very accurate in this corner. And so I'm just kind of saying, hey, is there any way we could work on this? Is there something that we could do about this that would make it more accurate? Because I think that's what I'm being asked to do, not like a debate about should we even have tourism.
That's not
where my intent at all is in this situation.
Yeah.
I would like it to feel a little bit more honest, I guess, and accurate.
Yeah. And so I guess I'll go back on my point as well. It's the information is, as far as I'm concerned, accurate, and it's there. It's down. And, because I was part of that group who asked Public Works to make certain that all the hours were earmarked for what was going on in Halloween Town 2 years ago.
Yeah,
So
longer, yeah.
it is there, and I'm not quite certain if it's there again from the police or from library or anyone else, but it's there for Public Works. And I know it is. And so, and all I'm saying is a report is something that to look at, for you to look at and for our public to look at. That's what a report is, as far as I'm concerned, whether it's verbal or if it's on paper that we can study. So if we want to make that available to the budget committee, I would favor that. I mean, I think it would be a good tool. It just, sometimes those things get really bogged down in terms of a budget committee looking at it. And hopefully, if you went to Public Works, or if any of the budget committee goes to Public Works or goes to the police and said, how are your hours being spent and how many hours do you have on this? And I'm sure that the department head will share that with any of us. And so if there's a recommendation at this point to think about possibly having those reports from each department as we approach the budget year, so be it. I would be in favor of that as well. So I think it's a good point, Leah. And I'm not arguing at all. I'm just, I'm on the same page in a sense. So I find merit in that, and I find value in it. And thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, so if I can just weigh in, and Councillor Martin, you're correct as some of your comments earlier. We do track the time that we spent on various events, whether that's Halloween Town or Christmas or 4th of July or whatever it is. Years ago, that was requested that we provide an hourly accounting, how many hours this week or this month was spent on these various tasks. So they did that for quite some time and actually had that available. That information wasn't, really nothing was done with it at that time. This was several years ago. We still track the time, but we don't report it, although we report generally in the monthly recaps. They report generally that so many people spent time working on these particular events, but in that monthly report they don't have the specific hours, but they keep logbooks of all of that. So that information is tracked. It's just not reported in a tabular form. But it very well could be.
But it could be information that could be used to make the budget a little bit more accurate. I mean, it's just moving numbers around, right? It's taking some of the money that comes to you from that tourism, and then it's the general fund putting money into the tourism. It's just it would just make the document more accurate.
So if that's something that's requested, that's absolutely something that would be available.
I think, I mean, obviously, there's probably a lot of stuff on this that I am not understanding about, as far as like tourism dollars and how all of that works, and what other problems it could cause. But I would be definitely all for just a little bit more accurate as we could get on it.
Yeah, and the kind of reports that Sue's referring to are taken, and some of the changes we've made is that there's how the allocation happens, the cost allocation. You're talking about a direct cost. And there's ways to do direct cost and indirect cost. And we take 10% of the hotel tax revenue goes into general fund now for administration as to.
Yeah, it'd be just like that.
Those kind of things.
But then of course, if there wasn't enough money in there, the general fund would just have to pay it. But what does that matter anyway? It would have less that it'd be given, you know what I mean? Like it's all the same money. It's just putting it in a different line to show, what's really being spent.
Yeah,
And
I think back up on your point is if the staff studies that, I know John, the finance and our finance director look at those things, and our department heads look at those things to make cuts with our personnel or to add personnel.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of their huge indicators.
Exactly.
Now, whether that's the responsibility of the budget committee is another question. Is it really the budget committee's task to say, oh, we should hire someone here, we should hire someone here because it's a shortfall here and sure. And
It is
and
the
in
responsibility
many
I'm not
senses,
suggesting that.
city
Yeah.
council to do that, and we need that information someplace so the city council can do that. Where the budget committee
Correct.
would say, would make a suggestion or a recommendation, but the council is gonna need that same information.
right,
Well, now,
Why not have it on the
let me-
budget
let me-
where it'd be a natural place to put it?
yeah.
I do have a question, and my question is, are you implying then that we're going to have their employees charge their, when they go put in a day, that they charge so many hours in each day to different funds? Is that where they be coding their time the way you would, let's say, way a lawyer would code his time? When I worked for the federal government, we used to have to code our time to various types of projects so that we could make an accounting. And of course, they did a computer readout at the end of the year, how much time we
Right.
spent on different projects, how much was
I'm not a
was
city
accomplished by the
accountant.
projects.
I wouldn't think that that would be necessary. I would think more of a general, hey, this amount of man hours got spent on this,
Yeah.
right? And that's something we could charge the tourism fund. I don't think each person would need to do that. I think Sue could probably say, hey, this amount of man hours in the last 3 months has been spent on, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and kind of turn that.
I'm happy to hear you say that, Leah, because that was a very time-consuming thing
I
for
don't
me.
think that's necessary.
Yeah, because it could really get out in the weeds, Bill. I mean, you could have Public Works be doing some park stuff, so they'd have to track their stuff to park.
Right.
You could be doing
Right.
SDC stuff. They could be doing tourism. They could be doing all kinds of different things. Just administration stuff around the buildings. It could get very, very cumbersome.
It could very well be, and can be very time-consuming on the part of the employee as well.
I don't think that would be necessary. I mean, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting something a little bit more in general than that, do you know? And then, like I said, I don't even know that has to be done every year. Basically, we do the same events every year. Couldn't it the next year be same as last year, and use that general number unless something major has changed?
The only thing that's tough about that is, and I will speak because I've witnessed it, is that Public Works, and I've said this prior too, it's not their priority to set up for Halloween Town or whatever event we have going down there.
Understand that. Yeah.
So what's tough is they actually take breaks and then they get called off. So if we're gonna be fair, and this is to Sue, or who is Sue still in that position, that we need to account that these people have taken breaks, and that if they could stick on a project for 8 hours just on tourism, I'm all for it. But if they need to take their regular breaks, but if they need to bounce off of that whole project slowed in momentum, because
I think that's also a lot more complicated. Like I said, why can't at the end of the week, why can't somebody, what is it, 11? Is it 11 people say, this week, how much time do you think you spent on,
here's an example.
on the 13th?
Here's an example. It's 2:30. We just finished our break. What do you want us to do the rest of the day? Well, why don't you guys just go down to Halloween Town and set up some stuff? And they send 4 or 5 guys down there, and it's not needed for 4 or 5 guys. It's really needed maybe only 2.
But so
Straighten
I
up
think
the
it's a little
marriage.
overcomplicated of what's being asked. I don't
That's
think
where we could
I
get
don't think
way
the
out.
ask is impossible,
That's
but
where-
I think we're making it sound that way.
No, but I swear it has happened before, and I'm not that.
Yes, but you can give an estimate at the end of the week. If you knew you stood around and didn't help with it for those 3 hours, you just had nothing to do, then you wouldn't report those 3 hours spent, would you?
Yeah.
You actually, in your mind, think and go, how many hours did I work on
Yes.
Halloween Town or
Yeah.
13 or whatever, right?
That's all I'm
Sit there
saying.
and watch
That's
it.
all I'm saying.
There was nothing to do, then they
That's
don't
what-
report that time.
Of course, so what I'm saying is be fair, because I own my own business, and when I come and do work on your yard and we sit and talk for an hour, I don't charge you for that hour. I could, because I showed up to time and material, but I don't, because it's fair business practice.
And I think Sue could probably explain that, right, to everybody of what they're
yeah,
asking.
and Leah, that's pretty much what you're describing is pretty much exactly what they're already doing. It's, at the end of the day or the end of the week, depending on when they finish with a task or maybe you go on to another one, that's what they keep in their logbooks. And it's not kept by each individual employee, but usually
Right,
by
'cause
the
it doesn't
lead
need it.
person,
Right.
because we have different crews that specialize in different things, although they all work in all different areas. But you know, the water crew keeps a logbook and they track what hours they work on what things. It's not a detailed, like, you know, like Mr. Eagle was talking about. It's not a detailed, you know, I spent
Yeah.
1 hour and 12 minutes on this and 2 hours on something else.
Yeah.
It's general, but it gives a good accounting of where their energies were spent
Yeah.
throughout the week or the day.
As long as you keep it simple, as long
Yeah.
as it's something that can be easily, and I use the word easily, put on the budget document to let the public know this is what the percentage of our time is being spent on.
Yep.
That's right.
I imagine they do this the same on the admin fees. Like when you see an admin fee out of one of the things, I'm sure somebody's not sitting there tracking. I worked 20 minutes on this file, and I worked. Do you know what I mean? Like Matt has admin fees taken out of certain things or whatever. I'm sure that they're not tracking every minute spent on it. I'm sure it's more of a, hey, in general, we spend about this much time a week on it. This is a reasonable admin fee. Something more on that line.
I think we're all on the same page. If I can continue the conversation and
Yes.
let it going, I think we're all talking about the same thing. And I think we've all come to the understanding that it sounds like the budget committee would just like to recommend that we look at a summary type report for tourism and public works staff.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to take it further and actually have it on a line on the budget, but we can start there.
You can, Leah, you can make that recommendation, or as the budget committee can make the recommendation to the city council.
Yeah, I think I would like to do that, where the report that Sue's talking about that she already makes, and I don't know how hard it would be for the police to do this also, but it seems like it would make sense for them also. And my main reason for that is that, like I said, you can look at there and see that their costs have went up by 1/3, but obviously the population and their call volume has not went up by 1/3. But then he says at every meeting, you always hear him say, oh, it takes a lot of extra time to do these extra events. You know, and he mentions
It's
Halloween
not all-
Town, 13/9. I don't know how he
his
would ever
cost is
track
not all
that.
tourism.
What's that?
The police budget did not go up by 1/3 because of events.
No, but don't you think that he should be able to say, hey, this is part of why we need more manpower, is because, you know, one night every Thursday in the summer, we have to have extra staffing. One night, do you see what I'm saying? Like, it feels to me like it's a little, it would just be more accurate for those departments also.
Well, one example on the police are a little bit different than public works because of the fact that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they needed a bunch of police officers. We had a large crowd. Last year we didn't. So if we budgeted that 3 years ago and just put that into a line item, and then this last year it was not a lot of security needed because there was not large crowds. It was just steady flow. So you see what I'm saying? On the police is a little bit different, in my opinion.
It is a little bit. I still think that we could come up with some estimate where we could kind of give the police department credit for the work that they do to some degree in a financial way on the budget. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of acknowledging that extra work that they do by saying, hey, there's probably an extra $40,000 or $50,000 worth of costs because of special events that St. Helens puts on. And I understand that it's a change every year. I'm sure for Public Works, it's the same thing. It's not the same exact every year.
It's the same for Public Works, but not for police. Yeah.
I believe Councilor Locke wanted to say something.
Keith, we can hardly hear you.
Hey,
Keith, we can't hear you.
Keith, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if your microphone is turned down or you're too far away.
He's not on in sound.
Yeah, he is. You're just not very loud, Keith.
Yeah, I can barely hear him.
Yeah, Keith, I'm not sure what your microphone is doing.
Go ahead and try, Keith. Speak loud. Keith, can you hear me?
Just wanted to say that the police keep track of every minute and they write a report at the end of every shift, so they know exactly what they do. And I'm kind of on the same page with you, Leah, because the police, we need to show the community that, you know, we're not just spending time here and there and everywhere, but the St. Helens Police spend a lot of time outside of our jurisdiction or other communities. And that would be really good information for a lot of our community to know that, you know, because the other ones everybody is hurting now because nobody has the police they need. So we're obviously the biggest city, and we end up with the lion's share of the work, especially if there's a major crime scene or something like that. We're actually the ones who investigate all that kind of stuff. So
I thought that stopped happening, but we're still helping all the other cities, huh?
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to go.
Yeah.
They have to go. They're not going to say no.
Yeah, I thought we'd kind of had a solve for that at one point.
Only for the small things. If it's something small,
Okay.
then we don't respond.
Yeah,
to
if it's
anything major, we respond.
yeah,
Okay.
if it's a life-threatening situation or something like that, obviously we're going to help. But if it's for something that's not that big, then it's up to the sergeants and the lieutenant and police chief to direct staff whether to go or not.
Okay.
And I did hear from the police chief in the chat that he does and can track the hours that are spent on events.
One thing I'm hearing is the town council is saying that the budget committee can make that recommendation that Leah is talking about. So how is that recommendation been made? Is this
Well,
sufficient?
first of all, we have
We had a motion in a second.
yeah, we have a motion in a second.
Councilor Morton.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm a bit confused in terms of what the issue really is. Is it like hours spent on specifics? And this is going to be really touchy, especially in public works, especially in the library, and especially in other places of where each individual spends his day and how much time. Or is it more specific, Leah? Are you asking how much specified time does employees spend in events and working with events and tourism? Is that, because I'm confused, because it seems to be going every which way
The second
in terms of being accountable. So is it specifically towards events or towards certain other kinds of things, or what are you asking?
I'm asking for, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for an approximate dollar amount that Public Works is spending on tourism for St. Helens. So the city of St. Helens right now is paying all this money out, just the city.
I've got it.
Tourism that affects everybody around. I think we should get to have a number and say, this is how much the city is spending on tourism, and we should get to charge tourism that. I do understand tourism does not have a pot of gold that's endless, and that our general fund may have to feed tourism to make that happen. But I think that we should be accurate in that number and know how much us, the city, is spending on that. And I would go further and say the police department also. I'm not asking for each person's time card and accounting of when they had lunch by any means. I'm looking for a general, just kind of a more accuracy in accounting as far as where we're spending money.
So can I make a recommendation that we make the recommendation to the city council after if there's any other discussion, and I hate to jump in Garrett's place. We have a second and a motion and a second on approval of.
yeah, can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes, is there any further discussion?
I'd like to make one point that I think is maybe we're talking about tourism, and we're also talking about community events. And what really, the things that aren't tourism necessarily, although they're managed through tourism, is things like, the 4th of July is not really, it doesn't attract people from far away. That's kind of a community event. 13 Nights has been a long-standing community event. The, really Halloween is pretty much the big tourism thing, and a lot of events that happen around that. But when we say tourism, I feel like everybody's putting all of the community events into the tourism bucket. And
I guess I kind of was. Maybe that's not accurate, but
Let's keep it
think
to
about
Halloween
Fourth of July and
Town.
I think about it growing. So I think about we're feeding something that maybe would grow to be, I think the name even got changed to community development. Is that right? So I kind of was putting everything in that bucket, but maybe that's not the way to do it, but that is.
So Keith, you ran 13 nights for a lot of years. It barely keeps afloat, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, at the end though, it was doing pretty good, yes.
But it doesn't make a lot of money. It's
No, it
not
doesn't make
designed to make
money.
money.
Doesn't make any money.
Okay.
Pay for itself, yes.
The 4th of July does not, it costs us nothing but money. So I am proposing that we only keep track of Halloween Town or any other events that are outside the spectrum of, we've always done Christmas ships, we've always done the 4th of July, and we've always done 13 nights. So specifically to Halloween Town.
I was going to make a suggestion that you use percentage of time rather than dollars or hours.
Mhm.
Just percentage, or we're spending certain percentage on this type of project. I think that'd be a lot simpler than saying, well, it costs so many dollars.
Yeah, I would like to mention that this discussion is getting away.
Yeah,
Yes, it is, Garrett.
I think the council and staff has heard Leah and everybody else, and we can take that discussion to the council of what they would like to see from the recommendations and discussions here. So if we do have a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay, is there any more discussion on any other thing, not this topic? Any amendments that somebody wants to make? Okay, sensing we're ready for a vote, the motion on the floor is to approve expenditures for fiscal year 2020, 2021 in the amount of $43,121,000 and to establish the maximum expenditures for each fund as showing on the FY 2020-2021 proposed budget expenditure summary by fund. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Hi.
All those opposed, nay? No. No opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Any other discussion, any other further business we want to take up?
So
Okay,
I-
since,
Hey, Garrett,
Go ahead.
just real quickly, I do want to remind, so we have a Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee meeting scheduled for 8 o'clock, which is in about 15 minutes. If you've had a chance to review the packet, it is a very small urban renewal packet of, I think it's actually 5 pages, but it's really 1 page and $53,000 of expenditures and contingency. But I wanted to make sure before we move off, and just wanted to see if the budget committee and the city council was okay with moving forward with that urban renewal budget committee meeting.
Yeah, I had one little follow-up on the conversation earlier. Would it be okay if budget members, whatever thoughts they had about the conversation about parting out those expenses, if they send that feedback to you so you can put that together to bring to council?
Absolutely.
Because I know that after this is all done, it's like people will think of stuff. And if you can compile that and come back with that, that would be great.
Absolutely. I'm happy to take those emails and compile it for the council.
That's all I had.
I would further that comment that Jen has and make certain it's an action item that the entire council agrees to, so that you got clarification from the council to do exactly what Jen asked. It's not from Jen, it's from the entire council.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody's words were heard and they all get put together and actually come to a council meeting. Because
Yeah.
it seems like things get lost at the end of budget committee until next year.
Sounds good. So Matt, I hear you saying that basically we're gonna roll into the urban renewal now, and now we'll have.
Well,
new
in 15 minutes, it'll be the same meeting ID. I will turn off the recording for 10 or so minutes and turn off the live feed. And then at 8 o'clock, I'll hit the record button again and we'll go into an urban renewal meeting.
Okay.
Let's
so we
take
got
a
15
15-minute break.
Yeah.
okay.
Garrett, did you want to go ahead and officially close the meeting then?
Yes, since we have finished the business and there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh.